And now we return to Oh for the Love of Amphibians. There are many young, luscious ladies this year, but that only means they'll be much pickier. Better flex those gills, boys. Oh no, a fight has broken out. Boys, please, there's no need to get rough. But then again, the testosterone. Oh my, the victor. But the ladies have already moved on. Better luck next year. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Oh for the Love of Amphibians. Yeah, you try making fun of the mating rituals of dead animals. But then again, we didn't get to see any actual mating. Yes! We don't care if you have to tell your kid about the birds and the bees. These documentaries need animal sex. It would just be nothing without it. But it turns out that Hyneria is not only a cock eater, but a cock blocker.
Hyneria can attack like a killer whale after a seal.
But unlike a killer whale, this sucker can pull himself onto land to catch his prey. Jeez, I thought the mutant tadpoles were the only ones that could leave the water. Speaking of tadpoles, the next evolutionary segue, so would that be evolution way or segolution? It is slightly different by using an egg. Trust me, you don't want to scramble that egg. Unless you like the taste of computer graphics. But this leads to my favorite Paleozoic time period, the Carboniferous Period. The age of insects. Now that's something you raise your mug to. Just to be safe, you might want to skip this part if you have a problem with bugs. But without further ado, let's take out our big-ass bug hand guide. There's Mesothele, the spider the size of a cat. Watch out, Whiskers. Meganera, a dragonfly the size of an eagle. I pledge allegiance to the United States of a giant dragonfly. And Arthropleura, the original human centipede, in that it can stare down a man, was 10 feet long, and could crush a car with its own weight. Try adding those bad boys to your bug collection. Now there are two reasons why I like the Carboniferous period. Partly because it's such a bizarre and alien world. Due to a combination of millions of years of plant growth and no herbivores, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is outrageous. A simple fern could grow to the size of a redwood. And old B-movie cinema had a fixation on giant bugs, so it's kinda cool to think that these creatures may have existed at some point. But what I really like about this time period is just how relevant it is to today. Oh yes, it's not called the Carboniferous just because it's a big fancy word. The amount of carbon dioxide being pumped into these trees will lead to the vast majority of the world's coal. One of the most important energy sources in human history. So while the Cretaceous may be filling our museums with yet another T-Rex skeleton, the Carboniferous has cooked our foods, powered our steam engines, and is heating and lighting our homes to this day. I'm just saying that it's something worth thinking about. But the downside to this increase in oxygen is an increase in storms and wildfires, the likes of which were so massive and violent that Katrina would look like a puddle, and Yellowstone would look like a match being thrown into a puddle. And I thought the bugs were enough to turn this into a B-movie. Apparently we had to throw in disaster flicks. Getting back to the creatures real quick, there's a little lizard that the show made a big mistake with.
Reptile Petrolacosaurus is hunting on the forest floor. But with their efficient hearts and waterproof skin, our versatile ancestors flourish in the new dry climate.
Ugh, God. Petrolacosaurus was a diaspid, meaning it had two openings in its skull, which meant a different attachment for its jaw. While every major lizard in this documentary is a synaspid, which only has one hole in its skull. So of course, when it evolves into a frillback, it feels like a gigantic oversight. That's like saying that Babe Ruth is an ancestor of John Cena. There's a tiny, tiny little similarity right on the surface. But when you really think about it, it makes no sense. Anyway, this is a Dilophosaurus, an herbivore, and it's nice to see a frillback that isn't the other one. And speaking of the other one, oh look, it's that dinosaur that's not a dinosaur that keeps getting in the dollar store toys. For some reason. The popularity of Dimetrodon has always confused me. On one hand, I like that a Paleozoic creature gets some attention along with the uber popular Mesozoic dweebs. But on the other hand, it's the only Paleozoic creature that receives any attention, aside from the trilobite. It's like the Paleozoic era is a music group, and Dimetrodon is their one-hit wonder. It might be something that everybody knows, but it's not a very good description of the real thing. But the documentary is aware of Dimetrodon's marketing potential, so this section will entirely focus on the aborted Spinosaurus fetus. But to be fair, a lot does go down for Little Miss I'm on the cover twice. She loses her meal, lays her eggs, protects them from harsh weather and predators, protects them again from a rival female, receives heavy but non-lethal wounds, nearly starves, and finally tries to eat her own young. Look. It's very obvious that they wanted Dimetrodon to go over as well as Postosuchus from Walking with Dinosaurs. Both being ancient creatures that are in fairly close time periods, both being introduced by hunting, and are written as top predators that suffer a number of tragedies, including the non-fatal wounds. The problem here is presentation. In Walking with Dinosaurs, Postosuchus was introduced with a few minutes of mood setting. Peaceful creatures grazing in a valley. They grow skittish and fearful, and then suddenly a crocodile-like head chomping down on defenseless prey, giving out a mighty triumphant roar. And how is Dimetrodon introduced? 2 minutes of butt kissing! She just stands there posing while Kenneth Branagh goes on about how awesome she is and how you should totally get her number. Postosuchus also represented how different the Walking With series was from other documentaries. No longer would it be about talking heads and crane shots in a museum. And whereas the other creatures, even the dinosaurs, were just running around doing whatever, Postosuchus began as the apex predator. But then she got hurt, lost her territory, and died from her injuries and starvation while surrounded by scavengers. That is not only real life, but real tragedy. It's almost Shakespearean. Dimetrodon, on the other hand, her problems start at the very beginning and never let up. Nor will you have any sympathy for her by the end. And even though she goes through hell and back, how does she even survive? I hate to say it, but killing her off would have made more logical and dramatic sense. Anyway, we move into the final desperate years of the Paleozoic era. Beforehand, all the continents have been drifting around, but at this point they've all smashed into each other, leading to more volcanic activity and vast deserts. This massive supercontinent was called Pangaea. But seriously, the late Permian period was natural selection at 200%. And then hooked up the gen engines on nitro and 5-hour energy, then a particularly delightful ass on the end of a string for encouragement. Animals not only had to be the best, they had to be Olympians. Which brings me to Gorgonopsid, the largest predator on Earth. So far. This is a creature straight from hell. 12 feet of pure killer and a specialized skull and canines that would put the saber-toothed tiger to shame. And a mix of mammal and reptile blood makes this monster a master of her environment. If this beauty has been put in a prehistoric fighting game, then there's something wrong with the world. But then again, there's also... You may question or laugh, but Dimetrodon is a real trooper. He may look like a reptile, but he lives like a prairie dog, and sports a pair of tusks like a hog. And like a prairie dog, they lived in family groups with many eyes watching out for predators. Speaking of, all of my Gorgonopsid butt kissing can't help her figure out that she can't bite something that's underground. Waste of time. Oh yeah, there's also Scutosaurus, a distant relative to turtles, because... Okay, really distant relative, like Pocahontas to casino owner. And rounding out the cast... in flamboyant fashion, no doubt... is Labyrinthodont, which is more laziness because it's Rhinosuchus. Labyrinthodont is a goddamn subclass. What's with not giving the actual names of the animals? Do some of them get higher billing than others? I suppose they want you to sympathize with Rhinosuchus, what with him being the last of his kind, but look, it's bad all around, buddy. There's a line for the watering hole a mile long, and the Dimetrodons have already taken the good neighborhood. And don't think that going into hibernation will get you out of paying the bills. So on a blistering volcanic hell world of sinister incineration, or Tuesday, the metric weight of 10% of Congress shows up in the form of a bunch of Scutosaurus who drink all the water, eat all the food, and then leave like nothing happened. There's your allegory for America, everybody.